Hello, we are back with a chapter call for the fanfic. The Tyrion chapter is still being worked on, but it should be out sometime soon in the future. But until then, let's tackle Jaime. So one of the big challenging things with the Jaime story is the timing. When we last left Jaime from his perspective, he was traveling from Raventree Hall to Riverrun, but stops in Pennytree. Then he's approached by Brienne, who says that the Hound is a day's ride away. Then in Cersei 1, he's said to be missing. He leaves his tail, that is, all people following him, and goes off with Brienne. And Jaime is still missing through Cersei 2 and the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons, long enough that people fear he's dead. This means that Jaime is missing all the way up to the first day of winter and Jon Connington's arrival. And he must be doing something off the grid for several weeks. And so we really need a Jaime chapter that accounts for this. What Jaime was doing for a few weeks before the first day of winter. And so this chapter will have to happen early. We're going to shove it in here at the 6th chapter of the fanfic. And it's not going to be too eventful. We want at least one chapter before we try to resolve Lady Stoneheart. We're looking for something short, maybe 4,000 words. And so the structure of the chapter is fairly simple. It's Jaime and Brienne at the Inn of the Kneeling Man having conversations with people. And then Jaime getting captured by Stoneheart's Brotherhood without banners. That's it. Now, I'm going to give a basic skeleton of conversation at the inn, but please feel free to change the dialogue and add other things. Again, this is just a skeleton. If you think of missing plots and missing characters from the Riverlands that should be mentioned, add them. Although you should try to steer away from talk of the Blackfish or the Freys, as this is already covered in the Elaine and Bravo chapters. Also, any discussion on oaths and the nature of morality are welcome, as these are major themes of Jaime and Brienne's stories. Or you can add stuff on the backstory of Jaime's life, or perhaps his thoughts on Tysha. So our chapter begins with Jaime and Brienne spotting the Inn of the Kneeling Man. Fittingly, there is a young girl, maybe 4 years old, kneeling outside of the inn, playing in the mud. She also has mud all around her mouth. It seems she's been eating the mud too. This is Weasel, by the way. The inn is a familiar sight as they visited here in Jaime 2, A Storm of Swords. Their skiff is even still parked at the dock. Though this time, there is smoke billowing from the inn's chimney, and men can be seen walking from the stables to the inn. The inn is alive again. Then we go back and explain how our characters got here. For more than a week, Jaime and Brienne have been trying to evade anyone who may be following them. They've been riding hard, sleeping little, doubling back, changing directions. Brienne had said their trip would be a day's ride from Pennytree, but that was clearly a lie. They were clearly going somewhere else, somewhere further, and Brienne doesn't want anyone following them. And Jaime definitely thinks someone should be. Despite his orders for everyone to stay put, he's fairly convinced that men will be looking for him. This would include Ilyn Payne, as well as his squires Josmund Peckleton, Lewis Piper, and Garrett Page. Most likely also Garth Greenfield and Malor the Dornishman, who owe him their freedom from Raventree Hall. And perhaps a dozen more knights would be combing the woods. You can throw in any other knights you think would fit in this band, forgotten characters as well, but keep in mind, they will face Nymeria in the future. Whoever they are, they haven't found Jaime and Brienne yet. After a night's snowfall, the two rode in a stream for 2 days, then forded the Red Fork, and headed west to the inn. And this is puzzling to Jaime. After spending so long shaking pursuers, Brienne is now risking an appearance at the Inn of the Kneeling Man. She had brought with her dye, and Jaime had dyed his hair and beard, but her size could not be hidden so easily. Anyone looking for a woman over 6 feet tall would find her trail here. Did she feel her lead was comfortable enough? Or Jaime then remembers their last visit to the inn, and the innkeep who was not an innkeep. Before, they had been directed into a trap by the man who controlled the inn. Is Brienne somehow in league with outlaws? Inside the inn, they are greeted coolly by Sharna the innkeep and Boy. This is Hot Pie, but he's always called Boy in the chapter. Jaime and Brienne go unrecognized, and the inn is full of patrons. At least 24 sit at tables, and a dozen more are huddled at the hearth. Poor fellows all. Jaime even hears some poor fellows chatting in High Valyrian. Tyrashi, Jaime notes. Though they seem to have long run out of their hair dye, he realizes that the Tyrashi are sellsword traders from the Battle of the Camps. They'll need to be executed later, he thinks, but for now, Jaime and Brienne are greatly outnumbered by their pious friends. So Jaime asks if Hot Pie has a name besides Boy, and Sharna says he does, but it's not any of his business. Jaime remarks only that it's confusing, and she'll say her other boy died along with her husband, so it's not so confusing anymore. When she hollers, the boy knows she's talking to him. Jaime then comments that a woman running an inn by herself must be dangerous, and she says she's got a dozen more husbands now to keep her safe, and she gestures to a table of the poor fellows. Jaime muses that maybe Maegor the Cruel should have tried marrying a few poor fellows. "These are dark times," says a poor fellow. "Winter is nearly here, but the gods help us keep the demons at bay. The ones of ice and the ones of fire." "Demons?" Jaime will ask. "The wolves," a poor fellow will say. 2 legs or 4? Jaime remembers that 1,000 Karstark men had sought him in these very woods, and that was not a year past, though it felt like a lifetime. The poor fellow will say, 2 or 4, we speak of the same ones. The Northmen are wizards, who worship trees, the cold, and worse things. Their magic lets them take the shape of wolves when it pleases them. Giant ones. The direwolf again. Jaime thinks that someone needs to do something about this pack. "Who are these fiery demons, then?" Brienne will then finally speak. "The Brotherhood." And then again we go back. Brienne had scarce said a word in the past weeks, at least nothing of substance. They mostly rode in silence, and when they rested, they spoke of trivial things. What fish swam near Tarth? Horseflesh. Stories about the man whose sigil she now carried. That is Sir Duncan. When they rode near the Trident, they'd even trained one evening, the waters drowning out the sounds of their blades. But her answer to other things were curt. "How did you get your injury?" "The Hound." "Where are we going?" "The Hound." "What does Clegane want?" "You." Sharna then scoffs at the mention of the Brotherhood without banners. Which Brotherhood, she asks. Hadn't they heard, there's a couple claimants now. The Lord's men and the Lady's men. Or maybe it's the King's men and the Queen's men. It gets confusing without any flags, but both groups were demanding more and more tribute. Now with her sparrows, they leave her be. Do they? Jaime wonders how true this is. If it is true, it's good news. The small folk are abandoning the Brotherhood without banners as they did the Kingswood Brotherhood. And they would be fractured to boot. Perhaps Stoneheart and Dondarrion will kill each other as Rhaenyra and Aegon did. The Brotherhoods worship fire, one of the sparrows will say. Necromancers they are. They steal babies for their sacrifices so they can raise the dead. But Lord Hasty will rout them out, another says. The man is Warden of the Rivers. Jaime is annoyed at the men's ignorance, but does his best to keep his cool. He says that Sir Bonifer is no lord, but a castellan. He commands no army save his holy 100. One will say he's a man of the gods, that's all that matters. And another will say, I hear he's giving out land for oaths of service. Jaime will think on this. The lands of Harrenhal are vast, tens of thousands of acres. If Hasty promises each man 5, he would have a sizable army. Where are you headed? Asks another poor fellow. We can provide protection for some coin. Acorn Hall, Brienne announces. But we are in no need of protection, thank you. Jaime thinks that Acorn Hall is the last place they would head, now that she's announced it. But lo and behold, after they leave the inn, they ride due south, just as she said. The rest of the day, they ride slow and camp early. And then the following day, it's more of the same. A slow ride. In the evening, they would build fires, something she wouldn't allow before. We're paralleling Jon and Corran here. They camp one evening and Brienne has first watch. And as Jaime lies swaddled in blankets, awaiting sleep that will not come, he cannot help but think of himself as a baby, being sacrificed. Beneath his blankets, he grips his sword, waiting. And sure enough, he hears a sound. He leaps up and sees a figure, half man, half wolf. It's one of the wargs, heading straight for him, his yellow cloak streaming. Suddenly he's tackled from the flank by a Northman with tangled hair and a tangled beard. He drops his sword and a half-dozen demons are on him. A laughing corpse with one eye has him by the neck. And the last thing he sees is Brienne standing there, doing nothing. And that's where we're going to leave things. Good luck with writing, and we'll see you next time.